When we learn, we're acquiring new skills and knowledge. Memory is the expression of what has been learnt. As such, learning and memory are closely linked. So in the world of training, it can be helpful to understand how people learn and retain new information. This video tries to do that by providing a simple model to explain how memory works. If you're a student of psychology, then this video isn't really for you. We won't be getting too technical here, and we might even borrow from more than one theory, so not very helpful from an academic perspective. For the rest of us, you can think of memory as having three basic parts. Sensory memory is the very short-term register of what you perceive in your environment, using the six senses of sight, smell, hearing, touch, taste, and dead people. Although, thinking about it, one of those was a film, so it is a register of the five senses. As you would quickly become overloaded by the sheer volume of perceptual information that you encounter, it is held in the sensory memory buffer for only a brief moment whilst you quickly process it. In most cases, what you see is forgotten in less than a second, and what you hear only lasts for around 4 seconds. However, if you're paying particular attention to something, or you perceive something that is of interest to you, it is transferred to the short-term memory. You are essentially taking all of those inputs and quickly sorting them into categories. That's called encoding. It's the first step in forming a memory, taking all of that sensory input from the environment and transforming it into something memorable so that it can be stored. Mnemonics and acronyms can be very helpful as they help you to sort otherwise abstract information into something relatable. For example, SMART tasks: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Or the mnemonic to help you remember the colours of the rainbow. Richard of York gave battle in vain. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Of course, the environment can also get in the way of forming memories. For new information to be encoded effectively, you need to be paying attention. Distractions, such as a phone in the training room, can disrupt that process. If the room is uncomfortable, or the temperature is too hot or too cold, attention can be disrupted. Your interest in the information, motivation, tiredness, and the amount of information are all likely to affect the encoding process. It's why it's important to set the room up so that it is comfortable and uncluttered, free of distractions. It is helpful to start training with a short activity to get people out of the work mindset and into a learning mindset. Your short-term memory or working memory is where the deliberate stuff happens. It is used to store information temporarily so that it can be accessed and manipulated to make decisions, guide behaviour, and think. When you are performing new activities, they require mental effort and make use of your working memory. You can only handle a limited number of things in your working memory. I once heard someone describe working memory as being like an iPad. I can't remember who it was, ironically, but the concept stuck with me. Your working memory is like a tablet in that there are different models available, offering different capacities and speeds, but they each have a limit to what can be stored. When your memory is full, the only way to make room for new content is to delete something. One theory suggests that working memory can last for around 20 seconds and has the capacity to hold 7 bits of information, give or take 2, at any one time. There are ways to extend your short-term memory capacity, one of which is to chunk bits together so that more can be retained, and another is to keep repeating the information to yourself so that it can be retained for longer. Rehearsing information to maintain it, or repetition, also increases the likelihood of that information being transferred to your long-term memory. Once it's there, it can be held, in theory, forever. Although the details can be lost over time, long-term memory is thought to have unlimited capacity and an indefinite storage duration. Once something has been transferred to the long-term memory, it frees up space and capacity in our shorter-term working memory. In terms of training, this is where we want information to end up, in the long-term memory, so that it can be retained and used at a later date when needed. Because you have so much more room in your long-term memory, it's easy for stuff to get lost. So, to make it easier to retrieve the information when it's needed, we need to move it back into working memory on a regular basis. This loop is important because you're using your working memory all of the time. Quite often, when you're using your short-term memory, it works because you are retrieving some other piece of information from your long-term memory to help make sense of it. The process of transferring something to your long-term memory is easier when you can connect that information to something that you already knew. By making those connections, you encode memories so that they are stored in an organized way, which also makes them easier to retrieve in the future. Prior knowledge and experience are really important to learning, which is why we design sessions to include lots of discussions and sharing within the group. The more you rehearse the information, the easier it is to retrieve it when needed. Eventually, you are able to perform some activities without even thinking about them. The patterns are so established that you can perform certain tasks subconsciously. It's sometimes described as unconscious competence. Here you're using a part of the long-term memory that we call procedural memory. Procedural memories are automatically retrieved and used when needed to perform basic motor skills and tasks. For example, when reading, tying your shoes, or driving a car. These all require conscious effort when you're learning, but become largely automatic with practice and experience. So memory is the process of how you encode new information so that it can be stored and retrieved when needed. The memory consists of three basic parts: sensory memory, or register, working, or short-term memory, and long-term memory. Focus and attention are needed for encoding to work effectively. Connecting new information to something that is relatable to you as it moves through the working memory improves the chances of it being stored in the long-term memory. Repetition also helps. Keeping notes during a training session and reviewing them shortly after the session is a form of maintenance that helps both retention and recall. The loop that is created between short-term and long-term memory builds connections in the brain that make it easier to retrieve memories when they're needed. So how do you know what to pay attention to? Well, we'll look at that in part 2.